Renfield is a horror comedy directed by Chris McKay with a screenplay by Ryan Ridley based on an original idea by Robert Kirkman. Dracula's long-suffering familiar Renfield, played by Nicholas Hoult, has finally started to acknowledge the toxic relationship that he's been in for over 100 years with Dracula. One day he meets a traffic officer named Rebecca Quincy, who inspires him to finally stand up to the Lord of the Vampires. Renfield is McKay's third film, previously helming the Batman Lego Movie and the underrated Tomorrow War. McKay got to start directing Robot Chicken for 3 seasons and 2 seasons of More Oral, so he has experience with comedies. Ryan Ridley penned the screenplay based on an original idea of The Walking Dead and Invincible creator Robert Kirkman. The film does have a Kirkman property feel, mixing humor, action, and surprisingly some dramatic moments. The film is blatant with its love of Dracula, even going so far as to recreate the classic Universal Monsters 1931 black and white film. The film is a black comedy, but it does have a surprisingly strong message about abusive relationships. Hoult plays Renfield as the victim of the ultimate narcissist. Sure, you have your classic Dracula lines like, "Renfield, come to your dark lord." But then you have Renfield saying power statements toward Dracula like, "I deserve happiness. I do not deserve to be treated this way. And I am taking back my power." It's a really funny scene as he says this to Dracula by reading from a self-help book as if he's reading from a Bible trying to ward him off. This is not Nicholas Hoult's first time playing a supernatural creature. He starred in one of my favorite movies, the zombie romantic comedy Warm Bodies. I can see why Hoult was attracted to the role, since this is yet another unique take on the horror film genre. He plays Renfield as a beaten down man who has given into despair, believing he'll never have happiness in his life ever again. He is so good at getting empathy from the audience, which is really weird when you think about it because Renfield has been providing innocent people for Dracula to murder for hundreds of years. Sure, he tries to bring in people he thinks deserve to die, like the abusive partners from his support group, criminals, and worst of all, ska fans. But it's not enough for the Prince of Darkness. He gains no real sustenance from the blood of the corrupt, only of those of the innocent. There's this great joke between Cage and Hoult that revolves around Dracula asking for a busload of cheerleaders, only for him to say defensively that it's not sexual. Awkwafina lends her usual comedic performance as Traffic Officer Rebecca Quincy. Rebecca is a police officer who's never risen past her low status on the force. Her backstory is a bit of a cliche, but she yet again turns the mundane into gold. My only issue with her role is that originally she's set up as this romantic lead with Hoult, but it never pays off. It's almost as if the filmmakers lost faith in Awkwafina being a romantic lead, so she's relegated to a buddy rather than a romantic partner. Which is a shame because she and Hoult have excellent chemistry. They play off each other. That makes me wonder how much was this written, how much was this improvised. It's a real shame because I think Awkwafina has some real range that's just not being taken advantage of. A big surprise was seeing John Ralphia himself, Ben Schwartz, play the Snevoline Teddy Lobo, who is the heir to the Lobo crime empire. However, even though I love the role Schwartz plays, he's starting to get a little bit pigeonholed in playing egotistical idiot characters. The comedy in the film is great. The black humor is on full display, as you have funny lines and gore, and oh, is there a lot of gore in this movie. This is a tribute to the classic 1970s Hammer horror film. There's exploding heads, maiming, and even someone's face being ripped off. If you don't like over-the-top gore, then I would not recommend you see this film. The fight choreography in this movie deserves a standing ovation. It's well lit, coherent, and creative. Gone are the days of the shaky cam action scene. To say the fight scenes are creative is an understatement. There are scenes where bad guys get their arms chopped off only to be used as nunchucks, people's spines being crushed, heads exploding, and John Wick-style gunfights. Sure, there's some CGI for certain kill shots, but for the most part, they're practical fight scenes with clever camera work. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Nick mother-fricking Cage. Cage has been a Dracula fan from the start of his career. He cites his first film, the bizarre cult classic Vampire's Kiss, as his favorite. He also produced the Oscar-nominated film Shadow the Vampire that starred Willem Dafoe and John Malkovich. To cast Cage as Dracula, the Lord of the Vampires, was a stroke of genius. If it wasn't for him, don't get me wrong, the film would still be good, but not a must-see movie. He was born to play this role. He oozes this darkness that just leaves you unnerved, the way he walks and looks at you. Also his teeth. Ugh, I'm gonna have nightmares for days. Yes, he does make the extreme faces just like he did in Vampire's Kiss, but sadly he does not recite the alphabet. But I think the most impressive aspect of his performance was portraying Dracula's narcissism. Remember the scene I told you about before with Nicholas Hoult? Cage's dialogue has that double meaning of a narcissist gaslighting his victim. He tells Renfield that he is the victim, that Renfield is the one that should be grateful to him, that he's nothing without him. He acts like Renfield's the one that wounded him, how everything Renfield loves will be taken away because of his betrayal. It's Renfield's fault that Dracula kills, not him. Nicolas Cage has the classic Cage mannerisms in this movie, like the small yelps and intense stares that he's known for, but for the most part he pours the fanboy love for the father role of vampires in the film. Honestly, you should just see this movie just for his performance alone. The film does have a quick pace, but I think it does drag toward the end of the movie. There's also a line that's thrown out there about Renfield and his family that's never really followed up on, and I really wish they would have fleshed that out, but you know what? That's just me nitpicking. Even though I do recommend this film, I don't think it's going to exactly break the box office. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not good. Quite frankly, I feel it's a fun film to see with your friends, and I think it's going to become a cult classic, but I just don't see this playing well with a larger audience considering how fickle moviegoers have been lately. I could definitely see this being shown at local movie theaters on a Halloween event for years to come. But I really think you should watch Renfield this weekend, because you're going to have a blast. I give this movie 8 out of 10 vampire bats.